be a very guest, a very special comic we're going to talk about and how that relates to comics journalism and the recent history of that. So we're going to get to that right after this wonderful opening song. Let's get it going. All right, welcome everybody, the One in Comics Pairing Show, and with us here today is Zack Quaintance, a longtime journalist and the creator/founder of the Comics Bookcase, which was a comics blog slash. I know you call it specifically, you on the Comics Bookcase website, you call it a blog, Zack. But I also know that you are a journalist by trade, even outside of what you've done for comics. So I like to think of it as a bit more of a journalistic site, even beyond just being a simple blog. But we're going to talk about the comic, Zack, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but his first foray into being a comics writer, I feel like that might not be entirely true. You're gonna need to tell me if you have any comics writing experience before then. Yeah, there might be a little backstory there, but this is his, for lack of a better way of saying it, this is where he gets serious, and this is the first of many to come. This is the death of Comics Bookcase. It's called that because he is walking away from that period of his professional comics life and moving into a new one where he is creating comics. He is now into his, I think I said this on social media, his authorial comics stage of his career. And Death of Comics Bookcase, Volume 1, his very first 48 pages, 6 stories. In fact, we have a nice little banner ticker that I forgot. Let's add this to the bottom of the screen here. So everyone can see 48 pages, 6 stories, one epic demise. Now on Kickstarter until May 2nd, so you still have plenty of time. And it is doing, frankly, really amazing. So we're going to definitely talk about that. And we are also going to talk about, I'm going to put the cover. We're going to go look at the covers and whatnot in just a little bit. I usually like to throw them up on screen beforehand, but we're going to go over the entire Kickstarter page. So let's hold off on that and let's talk about you personally, Zack. Talk a little bit about where you came from, how long you've been a comics reader, what made you start the Comics Bookcase in the first place? Like, why did you want to do comics blogging / comics journalism? We all know, like, we're doing a live stream. You did Comics Bookcase. It is, there's always a subset of people that are very thankful that you exist and the work you're putting in, and they become very fervent fans, very hardcore fans. But at the same time, in terms of the greater industry, it's a generally thankless job. We do it because we just need an outlet. And of course, we have pie in the sky dreams that it's just going to change everything and it's going to take off and be a runaway success every once in a great while. That is true. Most of the time it is not. But regardless, I do think the Comics Bookcase did have a very loyal following for quite some time. You did it from 2018 all the way to 2022. So yeah, give us a little bit of your backstory there because I am very curious.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that intro, by the way. That was it's always nice to hear people even remember Comics Bookcase. So after you stop doing it daily and you kind of disengage from the social media, it's like it gets in the rear view pretty quick. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I'll start. I've been reading comics since I was a kid. Got into like 90s X-Men and rode that into like late 90s, early 2000s Vertigo. And that was kind of the upbringing I had on reading comics. And like you mentioned, I'm a journalist. It's my day job as well. And so what had sort of happened was I'd fallen out of comics a little bit and I'd gotten really into like literary writing. Like I was writing short stories and outlining novels and stuff, but still working in journalism. And then as I got older, I kind of like felt myself pulled back to comics, like dabbling. Like I continued to read them all through my 20s, but like as I started to get a little older, I missed how fun it was, and I missed just like the medium and all of it, the culture around it and everything. I started reading again, and then I think comics, as you both are probably well aware, is sort of a participatory medium. Like there's just something about it that demands you do
Oh, yeah.
something as well.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to just you read them enough, you want to talk about them, you want to share the way
Yeah.
you talk about them. You just want to do something. So I took the background I had in journalism combined with my lifelong love of comics and started blogging. And Dave, you're right. Like it kind of did evolve past just a blog into more of a functional site. Like I had a stable of writers. We were updating the site at the peak 3 to 5 times a day, doing news and reviews, and like it got pretty big. I mean, I joke and hey, look, everybody's 6th favorite comic blog in 2021 is back in this new anthology. But like, yeah, we had a
Right.
a small but I think loyal readership, and the way I would pitch to pros with asking for review material or interviews was like, we might not be the biggest site, like we're not CBR or Newsarama or something, but the people who read our site love comics and they're like looking actively to buy new comics.
Yeah.
Like so like we might not
Right.
reach as many people, but like the people we do reach are really going to take
You're
seriously
reaching the
what we
right
have.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. The ones you want, the ones you want to get your comics to, you know.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of the big catch 22 in terms of like social media ads and things like that nowadays, where it's like, well, if you want reach, you've got to like spend all this money and do all this. And it's like, well, but that's a wide net. And
Really wide
there are a lot
net,
of people
yeah.
like we've had people on doing Kickstarter campaigns for comic book properties, and they do a lot of Facebook ads. They do a lot of social media ads where they pay for that. And they're like, they think it's going to do more than it does. And a lot of that is because it's like, look, eyeballs are seeing it, but it's not. If you can curate those eyeballs, that is so much more meaningful than having the, the Hollywood Reporter will pick up a story that you did on Newsarama or CBR or something like that. It's like, okay, that's really cool, but they're not, and maybe if you're trying to like sell your property to Hollywood, that could be beneficial or something like that. But in terms of people buying the comic, not really. That's still not the right audience for that. So that all
Absolutely.
winds up being you get the 15 seconds of fame of
But
having
you don't
gotten
get the
that big
conversion.
trumpet blast.
You rarely get the conversion.
No conversion. Right.
No.
It doesn't actually translate to dollar signs. So you're just like, well, what was that? It's interesting. Full disclosure, I did my years back in the day. This must have been, the late 00s, I want to say, into early 2010s, where I did Broken Frontier. I did a lot of comic book journalistic writing for them, and then CBR. I moved over to CBR after that. At the time, they were not the biggest comic book news website. That was Newsarama. Newsarama like ruled the day,
all day,
and I could never crack that shell. I could never get into the Newsarama side of things, but I did make it to CBR for a while. Even then, I mean, talk about the thankless part of it. I mean, you're doing it all free. No one paid us for this shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I'm still not sure. Like, they're always like layoffs at CBR. And I'm like, does it count as a layoff if they weren't giving you anything? I always kind of wonder. And maybe there was like a very small group of people that were getting paid, and those were the people they laid off, which is very sad if that was true. I have no insight into that. But I've done that game a little bit. So I have some insight. It has just been quite some time. So I'm always very appreciative when I see other people do that. So Comics Bookcase, when you quit Comics Bookcase, you did pivot for a short while, or maybe you still do this. You started writing for The Beat, correct?
Yeah. I'd always been writing for The Beat as I was doing Comics Bookcase. Like I would do convention coverage for them, and I was also like kind of on their DC Comics review rotation. So I was like kind of tangentially involved with The Beat. And then when I started to kind of wrap up or like scale down Comics Bookcase, I had a lot of really good people who I liked working with, and I didn't want to just be like, this is done, later, thank you, goodbye. Like, so I reached out to The Beat and was like, hey, like I'll take on a little more here. I can bring over some people. And I also had this column that I like to write. It's just a rundown of my favorite comics coming out in any given week. I'll read 20 new comics as they come in and pick 5 that I like the best. And I've been doing that since 2018, and I still do that at the Beat every Tuesday morning. It comes out.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I haven't been able to entirely kick the comics journalism habit, but like I've kind of made it work better within my schedule. And like that switch to the Beat really cleared up the amount of time I needed to get serious about writing comics.
Real quick, Zach, to jump back here,
Right.
what was that moment for you in Comics Bookcase where you realized this thing had some inertia, had some momentum, had some fire behind it? When did you start to realize there was something there outside of just a platform for your opinions?
Yeah, I think it was when Vault Comics in particular, like they were kind of getting bigger around the same time my blog was like, when I was starting to like really regularly blog about it, and I started writing about their comics, and they started sharing it. And I think that's when that it was a combination of like a rising publisher, and I was one of the only writers on the internet that was really seriously engaging with some of their early titles. Like Wasted Space was one I was like way out ahead on. And that's when people started really interacting with me online and looking at me like, this is the guy, the authority on Vault. He told me about Vault Comics.
Instantly becomes the authority.
Yeah. So like, I also like had a viral moment. I don't know if you remember this, but like Nicholas Skott did these like through the periods covers of like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and then Nightwing. And the front of the Nightwing one, he's like turned around so you can see his butt like on it, you know?
Oh yes.
So I got that on a press release and I put it out immediately, and the internet went nuts. Like that tweet from Comics Book, it was just like, look at this. And it was all 4 of those covers. And that tweet got like 60,000 likes. And so for a while I was like the Nightwing's butt tweet guy. Like, that was one of the big moments in the history of my blog that I spent a ton of time trying to get people to take serious. This is what really caught fire on the internet.
Right.
Nightwing's
a nice cute male bum, a nice tight cute male bum. That's
the internet went nuts for it. They loved it.
That's all it takes.
Now, did you? And was that something that you were like, oh, people are gonna love this, or was it just like, was that something that you consciously kind of knew you were doing? Or I was gonna ask because I was like, or were you just like,
I mean, you are a journalist, so you understand what's gonna do. You know, I'm not gonna buy that you didn't know what you're doing, Zach. Come on.
I thought maybe it would be a couple hundred likes. You know, like I felt like to 60,000. Like, no, I didn't see that coming. But that was something I regularly did. I would be like, look at this fun cover and throw it out there. Like I did that all the time, you know. And I thought that one, like, I think it was like the progression, like, because you couldn't see the like reveal the way the 4 photos were cropped. So I think it was the surprise that like really made that tweet kind of fun for people as they click and scroll through and get to the last one and be like, oh my god, like, and like a lot of people didn't know the like kind of insidery like comics joke about Nightwing, you know, like because there were like people in Brazil and stuff like commenting on that tweet, like, what is this? Like, you know, in Portuguese. So like, like I kind of knew it would be fun for people, but I didn't know it would be an international sensation.
There you go.
Right.
I love it.
You never know.
No, I remember
you gotta love though, like what helps you break through. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. Somebody I work with at my day job was like talking about it, and I was like, that was my tweet, and he's like, oh my god, that was you. Like, you were that guy.
Right. Because at that point, it's been shared and it's spread, and it's like, who knows? Like, no one's paying attention to where it originated at that point.
Right.
Anymore.
It was trending. It was like a trending topic that day.
Yeah. I always double check that because sometimes I'm liking things or want to comment on something, and then I'm like, wait, is this even the original poster? Like, what am I commenting
it's
on?
So difficult.
And then I try to trace it back, and I'm like, nope, this is impossible. There's so much. This is spread so wide. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna enjoy this for what it is. Comment on what, like, if I comment, it'll just be on someone's random reposting of it. I'm good. So coming into something like so I asked a question earlier. This is probably a good time to maybe go a little deeper. Did you ever attempt to write a comic before Death of Comics Bookcase Volume 1?
So yeah, like this is actually my second full-length comic. Like during the pandemic, a friend of mine and I made a one shot that we crowdfunded as well. It was called Next Door. And so that was really my first experience writing comics. Like, a buddy of mine, Pat Skott, who's an excellent comics artist, reached out during quarantine and was like, "Hey, do you want to do a 5-pager?" And we did that 5-pager, and we like kept building till it was 30 pages, and then we brought in Ellie Wright and Hassan Oatsman and Ellie to letter it. And yeah, so like that was my first experience making a comic. But I'd written a lot of comics, like, for practice and to like just kind of like kick around
Right.
ideas and stuff. And so like a lot of what you see in this book are like ideas I'd been playing with and trying to turn into like fully developed pitches and stuff. And then I distilled them when I decided to kind of go the anthology route with some of these ideas and like
Right.
get the like beginnings of them out into the world.
Right.
Smart. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll talk more about Next Door, because one of the stories in this anthology is a sequel to the original Next Door. And I believe the story, even the short story in the short story in this anthology even ends with a to be continued in Next Door #2. So whatever the next full lengther, I'm assuming, is going to be. Okay. And there's a lot. I have so many questions about these stories, because some of them seem to be like to be continued, and I'm like, what, in this volume 2, or are you hoping to spin them off? So we'll go through, when we go visit the Kickstarter page, we'll look at every story and kind of walk through and have that discussion there, because I definitely have a lot of questions on that. So let me actually backtrack with you personally for 2 things. One, journalism. This is your bread and butter in life. I'm assuming you went to college to be a journalist, and this was a calling for you, or you thought it was going to be a calling for you in one way or another. We all get disillusioned with the things that are going to be our calling.
Oh yeah,
at least somewhere down the line. Oh yeah. But I'm assuming. So, what made you want to be a journalist in the first place?
So I actually really wanted to write fiction. Like, I wanted to write short stories and novels. Like, that's what I wanted to do. But I was sort of conflicted. Like, I had always read the paper growing up, and like had an interest in like sort of romanticized journalism as a profession, like being a newspaper reporter and stuff. And it just seemed like a more stable job than to just kind of be at 22 years old, be like, I'm going to write a novel. That's what I do for work, like. So it seemed like a very practical way to like hone my writing chops, maybe travel a little, get some cool stories and that kind of thing. So I did go to college for it. Like, I went Southern Illinois University down in, because I was from Chicago, and it was as far as I could get away from home and still get in-state tuition. So, so I did that.
Right.
And so then I went to work while I was taking creative writing classes. I was taking journalism classes. I went to work for the student newspaper and got experience that way. Interned. I had work appear in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And then out of school, I took a job at the Monitor in McAllen, Texas, which was a kind of a mid-sized newspaper down like as 3 hours south of San Antonio on the border, which is almost as far southeast as you can get in Texas. And like, that was my first job out of college.
Oh man,
I did
the
that
humidity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It's tropical down there, and it's like. I remember at one point we had a string of like 90 plus days where the temperature got over 100 degrees, like 90 consecutive days of 100 plus temperatures.
No
like
way. There's no way.
Wild. Yeah.
Right. You're like, this is life. It doesn't change by the time 90 days has passed. Like, you've like stopped expecting it to ever go away.
Yeah. It's just very sweaty all the time. So
that is quite a job for your first job. I'm assuming the border, you were down there to report on the border and border issues, border politics, things of that nature. One, is that accurate?
Yeah, well, sort of. Like, it was very much a local paper. So my first beat there was cops. Like, I was covering police news, and part of that was covering border patrol news and press releases from customs and stuff. But yeah, I did that for about a year. That was really intense, like it's a high news area. And then after that, I transitioned to writing features and entertainment. So I found myself, I was like covering whatever acts would come through town. And this was at a time when like, I don't know if it's probably not still like this, but like when acts toured these cities, they'd call the local papers. So like I'd be sitting there at work and like, I'd get the call from reception, like Enrique Iglesias is on the phone. Do you want to talk to him? I'm like, yeah, like put him on, So I got to talk to like George Lopez, Cheech and Chong, Enrique Iglesias, like a real grab bag of
Nice.
acts
Yeah.
that came through this mid-sized
Right.
city. So that was pretty fun. That was a lot more fun than
Yeah.
covering the cop stuff.
Yeah, no shit. I mean, and again, a nice little like flavor, a taste of, because comics is part of entertainment. So like going into that direction and covering that type of a thing. And yeah, local papers, unfortunately, I feel like so many of them have, I mean, we're talking a little bit of the death of comics journalism. We're going to talk about the death of local journalism too, where so many papers have not survived or have been so downsized that they're negligible. So yeah, I feel like
Absolutely.
that heyday has also passed. Yeah, which is sad. But go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah,
You're about to say
like,
something.
yeah, no, that's very true. Like they've really faded, because they used to be like pillars of the community, so like
Absolutely.
like they were people's guide through pop culture. That was part
Absolutely.
of what I liked about it growing up, like reading the entertainment page
Yeah.
and stuff. And like, I mean, obviously that's not the case anymore.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get back there. Maybe the pendulum will swing back once again after the
Something's got to fill the void, right? Like
has to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, though everything, of course, is going more and more global, quote unquote, but even if not
Yes.
Authentically global in terms of other countries, like it's all about, we were just talking about casting with the widest net, and that's really what it's all about. It's why our entertainment these days is tweaked to appeal to the largest possible swath of audiences, not just local audience, and local by like the one country, but like it's got to translate internationally, visually and character wise, and like you want it to play well everywhere.
It has to go wide immediately.
Yeah, has to go wide immediately. And and again, you're spending so much money, though. We'll see. One of the things that's happening, me and Dallas are usually based out of LA, so we're very much on like the the Hollywood scene and whatnot. And one of the big pushbacks and the I don't want to say statistics. I don't know how many like hard numbers we have for this, but the sense of everything right now is that the latest generations are really pushing back on franchises, on remakes, on tentpole. Like they're done with them, and they're like, we just don't care anymore. Like we don't want. And part of the problem is, and this is probably my own pet theory on this, but like when we were growing up, we were and I don't know how popular of a child you were, Zach. Maybe you were, and you only became really nerdy later. But kind of in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle. I'd say in the middle.
In the middle.
Yeah.
But for most of us, like our nerdy side, even if we weren't entirely like completely nerdy or geeky or dorky or what have you, like we had that side to ourselves, which was not popular, was not particularly mainstream. If you were into role playing, comics, genre, that was a very niche thing. And now that we've all kind of inherited the earth in terms of like the mass culture effect, where it's like video games and tentpoles, and it's all the stuff we loved growing up. So now we're in power and we're like, oh, okay, we want to do another Indiana Jones movie. We want to do another Ghostbusters movie. We want to play with all the sandboxes we had when we were kids. And I think we're now into this place where the latest generations are like, wait, where's our shit? We don't want to grow up with your shit all over again.
Yeah.
Where's our original content? For us as kids, because all this stuff was so important to us because it was brand new. We had never seen it before. Like Ghostbusters, that original Ghostbusters is fucking weird, man. The tone of that movie is like that. Right. It's like the freakiness and the weirdness, but then it was a little, and then the comedy, and even the comedy. When I was a kid, I did not understand half the comedy, even though I was laughing at it. And you appreciate it so much more when you grow up. But it was, everyone watched this stuff, and we grew up with our own. And so yeah, I think there's I think the
content. I think a lot of the content that came out of the 80s did just that. It took these sort of genres and blended them so well. Like a film like Ghostbusters, which has really acute horror elements and really acute comedic elements, and they're just married so seamlessly that it was impactful on our generation. It was unique. It was interesting. It was novel. It was all of those things at once. And
for
40 years later, we're still trying to.
I was going to say in also traumatic in a healthy way, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
no,
when
totally,
you're right, it's like because you were mesmerized by it because it affected you in this weird way where you're like, this is I almost can't watch this. It's kind of authentically scary,
yeah,
and yet it's mesmerizing, and I'm going to go back to it. And we definitely lost a little bit of that.
Yeah,
if
that's
not
the
a lot
nuance.
of that.
That was the nuance of those times. Like everything was sort of new. You had video game culture influencing everything. You had comic books coming into the mix. You had, sort of the millennium approaching. So yeah, you got all this sort of genre blending that happened. That was just so fucking satisfying, even in comics, And that's dwindled over the past few streaming decades. So.
I think you're onto something though, where it's like that's our stuff, so for younger people at a certain point that's going to become like we don't want to talk about it like that, but that's going to become for old people.
It is, and it has been for a while.
Right?
But the people in power are our ages, and they're making the decisions, right?
Right.
Exactly,
and so we're like, let's keep bringing back all the stuff we grew up with. And and to some degree I understand it, and to some degree I look at like I'm getting to the point where I even get a little like I squint a little bit when I see like a social media post of another one of my peers who's like, I just introduced my kids to whatever movie I grew up with, or they watched whatever, and like I'm so proud they like it, and I'm like, this is all we're doing these days.
That's it.
I'm like, I feel like we've lost a little bit of the
it's up stagnation. Like, it is pure stagnation,
right? We get to let go of those things and let your kids also, because when I was growing up as a kid, like there were some, like my dad showed me a lot of like Mel Brooks films and Monty Python things that were slightly predated my time, and like those stuck with me too. I love those, but they were few and far between. They didn't make up the majority of my media consumption, and I feel like that definitely shifted at some point where the only modern franchises, and these aren't even that modern, and these people are all old, they're not the latest generations, but like Harry Potter and Twilight were like the last two mega franchises to take off that are after my time, but are not millennials. They're now the millennials are coming in and they're like, fuck, all we have are older people shit, and we're outside of like
Gen Z now,
rare Pixar movies.
It's the Gen Zers now. They're movie going public now, and I think one of the reasons nostalgia is so strong in passing generations is that those movies came out during their time. They came out, using subjects and technology and themes that were of the moment, of the time, and unfortunately, these kids just aren't getting that. Because we need another iteration of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or two more He-Man series. Yeah. Like, come on, what's happening here? So
right.
God, we sound like wow.
I know,
we sound old.
We're all on the same page, and we're just like the guys shaking our fists at the cloud.
That's okay.
Right? But give the kids something.
But at the same time,
new.
I do think
I
think it's good. Right. But I feel like it's good for us to say that because it is our generation that's kind of kept us locked in this. And not just our very explicit generation, because I'm sure our ages are even fluctuate maybe a little bit between us, maybe not, we'll see. But we're all definitely up there. So we're the ones who need to start saying it, where it's like, no, stop feeding us. We're good. We're totally good. We have enough content to take into our Twilight years. Bring something new that we've never seen before, and
I'm okay without another Ghostbusters. I'm
also okay with it. I'm
okay with rewatching the old ones.
Rewatch the old ones. Totally fine.
Right.
I'm totally
exactly. Okay. Keep them in print. Keep them available. Don't take them away. That's bullshit. But don't do the whole like Disney Vault thing. I hated those years when they did that stuff, when they would just take things away for like 10 years at a time and then put it back just to create that fake demand for it.
Fake demand.
Like, God damn it. Yeah. And it was
all right. By the way, guys, kid, I'm gonna put this in your ear. In about 5 years, I'm going to open a nightclub, and it's going to be called Blockbuster. So it's going to be the world's largest Blockbuster video with actual tapes on the wall and a checkout person, and you can honestly rent them. So
You have to have a card to get in. That's the
absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
only open from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. Right?
Exactly.
It's a true nightclub, so you know who your clientele are. Although by
Exactly.
that point in time, by the time you're opening this, we'll all be so old it'll only be
Oh
open
yeah,
from like
10
5
o'clock.
a.m. to 10
Yeah,
a.m. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like it'll have
Yeah.
completely switched
I'm
over.
done at 7 most nights. So,
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
And see, look at this. We have an old fogey in the chat here, Steven Laffler, underground comics, great. Old from where I sit, you guys are a bunch of kids. I know.
Well, thank you.
I know, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
But
Thanks, Steven.
oh, well, I saying thank you for the entertainment. Well, I will. Yeah, I mean, Steven is even more into older stuff than we are, probably. Although I would say, like, I don't know how old you are, Steven. To be fair, but probably like near in between me and my dad's age. I'm assuming. So I'm still into a lot of the stuff from those eras as well. But again,
absolutely.
it's
Nostalgia is very strong.
yes, but I do think the spending money in terms of the point of all that, before we got on the rant, the point of all that was the spending like almost needing $1 billion per movie to break even, I think is something that people are really heavily starting to rethink. And realizing that we don't need to create franchises because all those great franchises from the past that we love so much were not made to go international the way we're trying to make things today. They were made for reasonable amounts of money, even adjusting for inflation. Like we've gotten to this point where, you know, what we try to do with a lot of our entertainment now and our franchises and our media are unsustainable. And I do think even the decision makers are starting to take the hint.
I will say one counterpoint to that is the unfortunate thing, an onslaught that's about to happen as a result of the Barbie phenomenon.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Hold on to your nuts, boys, because the amount of game IP proliferation and media sort of film translations that are coming our way, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's going to be insane. I think the latest, I think the star of Barbie, whatever her name was, just signed on to produce and direct the Monopoly film.
I saw that. Yeah.
Margot Robbie.
Yeah. So, and tons more.
Okay, but to be fair, Monopoly has been in development for like 20 years as well. Like just like Barbie was. We had G.I. Joe. Right. We had Battleship. Does anyone remember Battleship?
No.
They actually did
totally forgot about that movie.
Yes, they made it, and it made tons of money
for a long time.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for the Connect 4 movie. That's going to be my jam. I don't care what they wind up doing, but I'm showing up for it just to support. That was always my favorite.
I want the Light Bright film. I'll take Light Bright.
Or do Risk, the board game. Give it to someone like Steven Spielberg or Christopher Nolan to do like the true historical war type thing, like make it really heavy and dramatic and just
thank you. Absolutely
make everyone be like, we don't know how we feel about this. It'll be great.
Give it to Scorsese. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Your 15-hour long epic.
Every time he makes a movie, I'm like, okay, the last hurrah, right? And then he makes another one 6 months later. It's amazing.
All right, Zach. Sorry for the rants. Sorry for the tangents and the rants. This is what we do.
Yes,
no, it's fun. It's fun. I'm having a good time.
So, Zach, your favorite out of all the journalism you've done to date, and this could be a comics thing, this could not be a comics thing. What are you most proud of?
Man, I've read some good stories. Like I've been lucky to write some really cool feature stories. Even before the last thing I sort of did in college, I had a fellowship in Florida, and I wrote this feature story about this guy was an old blues singer, Mr. Satan, he was called, and he'd played with everybody through the South and stuff. And I found out that he was in a nursing home down in Gulfport, Florida. And that he was kind of suffering from dementia, but as soon as he picked up a guitar, it all came back, and he started playing music like it was yesterday. Yeah. And so I kind of like interviewed him, and his the guy who played harmonica for him was this guy named Adam, so it was like Satan and Adam, which is kind of a cool act name, you know. So I wrote a feature story about that, and to this day, like that's still like I kind of get goosebumps thinking about like watching that guy play the blues and everything. So yeah, like that. I've had a few feature stories. like that. That was always kind of my favorite stuff, is just like writing about really interesting people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have any like I investigated this malfeasance and like got this politician to resign or anything like
Right,
that.
right, right.
Like that really wasn't the kind of
No
stuff I was
Watergate
good
stories.
at.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
me. So, like I was a much better features writer. And I think that's kind of like what I like irreverent stuff, and I think that's kind of what led me back to comics eventually.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
Reading
Yeah.
for fun.
That's cool. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the guy having dementia, but he could still pick up the guitar and play. And like one of the things that's always kind of astounded me of musicians in general. And sorry, Steven, I'm going to say this. I know you're a musician as well, but I'm going to say this about just sort of my broad strokes. Whenever I see like musicians interviewed a lot, and this isn't every musician under the sun, but it is the vast majority of them. It's like whatever center of our brains are, deal with language, like just speaking, and that type of communication versus the communication or whatever skill set of the brain is the playing of that music. They are like two different things.
Yeah.
I think they are so incredible at expressing themselves through music. And it's interesting that when you're like, he was suffering like onset dementia, but it was not affecting his musical skills. And I'm like, you know what? No, I buy that. Like, I think these two things are so weirdly sectioned in our brains that like one would not often or regularly affect the other. I have no scientific proof for that. It's just
me neither.
Pure observation.
Yeah, that was me too. Like it was totally anecdotal, but that's exactly what it seemed like when you watch this guy play. Like it would just all come rushing back to him. Like and he'd get outside of whatever was going on. He'd get outside of it for a little bit while he was on stage. It was really cool. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, good on
Comics
you.
Bookcase.
All right.
All right.
So one more question before we move on. We're going to go take a look at that Kickstarter page. One last question for you, just out of curiosity. So Next Door was your first comic. How did you and your artist co-creator, why Next Door? Like, how did you come for that to be your first comic?
That's a great question, because so it's kind of funny. Like he'd been working on he was a really good sci-fi fantasy artist, and he still is. Like he draws like incredible aliens and things like that. And he'd been doing, I think, some like kind of portfolio reviews with publishers and stuff, and they'd kind of given him this feedback like, man, this stuff's really great, but like we don't see anything here. Like if you're going to draw sequential art, you need to be able to draw like houses and neighborhoods and like like everyday things, So when he reached out to make a comic, he was like, hey, I'll draw it for free. Like don't worry about anything like that, like we'll have some fun. But my one request is like, let's ground it. Like let's do everyday life. So like let's no spaceships, nothing like that. So I was like, okay, all right, well, I'd love to write for an artist. Like I've been working on these scripts, and I've never had the resources to like really bring on an artist or any of them. So like I'll take that challenge up, And it was kind of fun to like really not be able to like go super like pulpy or like fantasy wise or like stuff you would normally think as a comic. So we had to like ground it and kind of restrict it to the neighborhood. And it actually worked out well because it was during quarantine and I couldn't leave my neighborhood anyway. So like setting a story that had to stay within the neighborhood could not have been easier at that time, And like if you remember, like during quarantine, like being in your neighborhood was scary. Like going outside was scary, like in those early months. So like it kind of was good timing for that. But that's why, because like I know, like when I had the crowdfunder, it was like a few months later, my family was like, why are you writing a comic about this? Isn't it supposed to be superheroes and stuff? And I'm like, first of all, comics can be anything. But second of all, because the artist wanted to draw like everyday life.
Right.
So,
that makes sense. Because it was curious that okay, perfect. Because I'm with you. I like indie and like underground comics back in the day, which were always just almost stream of consciousness, and grounded might not be the right word for them, but they were often just like the R. Crumb comics of the time and things like that, where it is just people wandering around and like getting into hijinks and saying things in this very almost lucid dreaming kind of a way. Like there was always a lot of crazy comic shit going on in those comics, but it was knowing your background and seeing the other stories in this anthology. Genre was something that was obviously also very important to you. So I was just like, that was your first. Like, did you not want to take that plunge until you had tried another, like something gentler first? So I was very curious about that. But that makes a lot of sense.
I do think it was kind of worked out well that way. It was a nice sort of ramping up, because like having made that one a few years ago, when it came time to do new stuff, I wanted to get as far out there as I could and like really make use of how great the medium is with genre. And like if you look at the book, there's like 5 different genres in it now, because I was like, I want to play with this, I want to play with that.
Them all.
Yeah, I want to do all the genres.
Yeah.
like so yeah, I think that kind of led to that, to like
deal.
try my hand at everything, just to kind of like see what it was like, prove I could do it, whatever, you know.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. That's cool. I do want to also say, since we're on this topic, and Stephen popped up, I don't know if you're familiar with anything Stephen Lafler has done in the past. He's definitely before your time a little bit. I caught him. He was doing a comic called Bug House. That was the first thing that that's the one I want to shout out to, because it's all about blues musicians. It's sort of a period piece about blues musicians, all as bugs. So
that's awesome.
They're all different insects, but it works. It is one of the best. The entire thing is collected into one graphic novel now that you can like run. Steven sells it. I think it's print. I think he has copies. He's now done some print runs of it. I got a copy when he was doing it print on demand, and it is still, I think, one of my top 10 graphic novels of all time. It's amazing. So wanted to give you a note to like write down to go Definitely. Find that someday, because I think you would dig it quite a bit.
It seems fated. Like I was talking about my blues musician feature I wrote. You know?
Exactly.
It was like it was meant to be. Exactly. I have no choice. I have to get that.
All right. Well, let's go over and take a look at Death of Comics Bookcase, Volume 1, Kickstarter page.
Let's do it.
Go, everybody. All right. Death of Comics, Volume 1, 48 pages, 6 stories, 1 epic demise, which is the demise of the comics bookcase. We're going to talk a little bit about, this might even be in the video. Let's see. We're going to play the video. So let's get that started.
Why, hello, and welcome. Because I'd like to introduce specific to Death of Comics, Volume 1, my new Kickstarter comic. This is a 48-page short collection, all written by me and brought to life by some of the best rising and established artists in the entire industry.
We've got a horror story with art by Anna Readman, colors by Brad Simpson, and letters by Becky Carey. A brand new superhero, co-created by Nick Cagnetti, with letters by Francois Mignon. A fantasy story, drawn by Luke Horsman, with colors by Jason Wordie and letters by Rob Jones. A slice-of-life crime comic, with artwork by Pat Skott, colors by Ellie Wright, and letters by Rob Jones again. A sci-fi war comic, with art by PJ Holden, colors by Deirdre Kelly, and letters by Simon Bolin. And, last but not least, the Comics Bookcase, appearing in Death of Comics Bookcase, with artwork by Ryan Lee, colors by Doug Garber, and letters by Sean Lee. And we've got a main cover with artwork by John McCrea, colors by Mike Spicer. A cover for our deluxe edition with artwork by Raul Allen. And a super rare, exclusive superhero variant with artwork by Nick Cagnetti.
Check out the campaign page, snag a copy of the book for yourself, and help us bring this thing to life. I'm just so proud of all the comics we've made here, and I cannot wait to put this thing out in the world and get it all to you. Thanks so much.
All right.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Ooh. So as you saw there, guys, that it was the embodiment of the comics bookcase in a somewhat monstrous form. We'll see some more images of that down below. But yeah, that was when I first started in that thing with the giant tongue, and of course you can see like the long boxes and like the omnibuses and things like that, like stuck in them. I was like, wow, that's kind of perfect. I was not expecting that to actually happen in the comic. I thought it was just a purely, I mean, it is a metaphorical title, but at the same time, and to be fair, there's probably going to be a volume 2, so this is not like the ultimate
Yes.
death of the Comics Bookcase quite yet. We're gonna keep going probably a little bit beyond. But
nothing
he's the
really
framing,
dies in comics.
story.
You know?
Yeah, there you go. There you
Nothing
go.
ever.
Perfect.
Nothing stays dead anyway.
Exactly. So as you can see, guys, $10,000 already, $10,274 on a $6,500 goal, 200 for backers. So plainly doing really well. 15 days to go, so only really about halfway through. So you got plenty, quote unquote plenty of time, but only till May 2nd. Don't be a me, pledge, and then you don't have to worry about it afterwards. Don't wait. Don't click the saved thing. It's always because then I don't check my the save thing sends you a notification 48 hours before, but that will always be that'll always be the day I'm swamped and I'm not looking at the promotional emails that are coming through from Kickstarter or anything. I'm like, yeah, I'll get to them in a day or two. And then I see all the reminders that came through and I'm like, fuck, I knew I should have not clicked the reminder because I was authentically interested in doing that. And then I have to wait. Then I follow the creator so that I know when they launch the next one on Kickstarter, which tends to be what I then have to do. But yeah, don't be a me. Just pledge. Just get in there and do it. All right. So coming down. Here are the creators. So yeah, Nick Cagnetti. If anyone's read Pink Lemonade, that is one of the greats.
So good.
I have it's so good. I have all the Pink Lemonades that he did with. Did he do it with It's Alive Press when that was going on? I want to say.
Yeah,
and they did
the first 2 issues, I think, were it was the very beginning, and then it all moved to Oni later. And
Right. And so I have I think I have like 4 or 5 issues. And then he did a crossover with an ape thing that I also have. And I'm forgetting what the ape thing is now. But there was some other
baboon. I think it's called
Pink
the
Lemonade
baboon.
special. Baboon, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Baboon. Yeah.
That's the one.
That was very good.
So yeah, Pink Lemonade, fantastic. It's
Holden.
hard to describe Pink Lemonade exactly. It's very much How would you describe Pink Lemonade?
Pink Lemonade, it's like a blast of feel-good superheroes. But if you get to the below the surface a little bit, there's a lot of commentary on the comics industry. So it's like a glossy kind of like frosting over the top of like very serious critical thinking about creative work and its mix with business. It's really, really good, especially for like a first major work from a young cartoonist, really good stuff.
Yes. The first time the first issue of this that I saw that they crowdfunded way back in the day, many years ago, I think pre-pandemic, was the art alone. It looks so assured and so developed that you're like the style of it. You're just like, holy shit. And I mean, he came out the gate that way. I mean, from my perspective, I'm sure he would disagree, but by the time I saw it,
we didn't see all the work that he put in to get there,
Exactly.
But he's super talented.
Yeah. And then we got PJ Holden. And you know what? It's funny. When you mentioned Judge Dredd, like looking at the art in this story, I'm like, oh yeah, that is such Judge Dredd art. That is such I can see why he was chosen to draw that comic. I know I've heard the name PJ Holden before, but before reading this short story, I don't think I was particularly familiar with him.
Yeah, he's really not as well known in the United States as he should be. He's very well known in the UK, like in the UK comic scene, because he's worked with Garth Ennis, not just on Judge Dredd, but they did these war comics, these battle action stuff, and a couple others. But PJ is amazing. Like he's just an amazing cartoonist. He's doing some stuff for DC lately. So hopefully, like American readers will start to key in on just how great he is.
Absolutely, very cool. Absolutely, and then Luke Horsman, Enemy Earth.
Another UK cartoonist. Like about half the artists in the book are from the UK. So.
Well, we were having this conversation with someone last week, Dallas. I'm gonna blank on which one it was, but all about now I'm remembering. We didn't. So this is one you missed, Dallas. Sorry. I'm glad I remembered. But we were we had the creator of the Balor comic that's on Kickstarter. He's Irish based. and we were just talking about the difference of like the creators from Britain, Scotland, and Ireland that suddenly were coming over while we were growing up because of the Vertigo craze.
Yeah.
And then there were things like Marvel UK that became a thing for a little while. And I don't know if Marvel UK might have been before your time, Zach, ever so slightly. This was the 90s. So it was, but there was this, it was like Death's Head 2 and Death's Head and the original Death's Head 2. Liam Sharp first came over during the Marvel UK phase with Death's Head 2 and like this comic called Bloodseed, things like that. They all disappeared really fast. Like Marvel UK, I think only lasted a handful of years, but holy shit, I was exposed to all of them in this one like really condensed time frame, and then they all went on to work on other American properties, and then I some of them are, I think Garth Ennis is possibly my goat as a comics writer.
I love Garth Ennis. Yes.
I'd say that's a pretty popular choice.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit. Yes, and we'll talk a little bit when we go see the cover by John McCrea too, because he's a regular Ennis collaborator as well. And
indeed,
I know him predominantly from his Ennis stuff. Oh, and talking about that, we're almost there at the cover. But first, we also have Ryan Lee. Ryan Lee from Mountainhead. He's another one. I don't think I know of Mountainhead, but I'd never read it. So this was my first comic story that I'd seen Ryan Lee art on this one, but he's good. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, he did that monster bookcase, and like I remember like when I developed that story, like when I had the idea for it, I was like, it's gonna be hard to find another human being who gets this the way I need them to get it, you know? And he nailed it.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely amazing. Like he got the tone, the look, the scariness, all of it. It's all in there.
Yes. Well, going back to our Ghostbusters thing about that weird like trauma in a good way, like that comics bookcase is trauma in a good way, especially if a kid saw that thing. I feel like that is exactly that sweet spot. Yeah.
You know what it's based on is Pee-wee's Playhouse. It's like I sent him a picture of the chair, and I was like,
there you go.
The chair, make it a bookcase, but make it sadder in a way.
Make it sadder, yeah.
So like the old decrepit, he's breaking down, but also going a little nuttier. Like he's half insane because of he's like going back to onset dementia. It's almost like the bookcase is in that part of his life as well, where he's just sort of, and then the kids, he draws great weird looking kids.
100%.
Yes.
And that's what he does in Mountainhead. Like Mountainhead very much is a monster comic with teen characters, and so like when I had this idea, I was like, he was my first choice with a bullet. Like there's nobody else I would have, I don't even know who I would have reached out to if he wasn't available to do it. But yeah, the kids are fantastic, and they really have a 80s teen adventure group vibe. Like
they do.
Like I think the note to describe one of them was like, let's just make this character Molly Ringwald and we'll move on. So like
I like that.
I see that. Yeah. And then Anna Redman, or Readman or Redman?
Redman is how I've been saying it. I hope that's right.
Okay.
She's another UK cartoonist.
I know. Okay. Because in my head I've been saying Redmond too, but I'm just noticing I'm looking closer at her name and I'm like, oh crap, is it Readman? But she is. So I saw that she had done like this black and white comic before that looked very like David Lapham, like a more detailed oriented David Lapham style, like noir.
That's a great way to describe her work. Yeah. But she's incredible.
Yeah.
She's a young cartoonist. Like, if she's not a giant star in comics in 5 years, I'll be absolutely shocked. Like, she's just so good.
Yeah, she's really good.
People are starting to catch on. It's so like I think it's just a matter of time before she breaks out.
Cool. Yeah. And then Pat Skott, of course, we were just talking about him, the next door collaborator who needed to learn how to draw normal non-genre things. Yeah.
Yep.
And so he's like, give me just dogs and houses and fences and a car.
Grumpy neighbors,
and normal
coffee
people
shops.
Grumpy neighbors. Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. And then here's the main cover by John McCrea. And for those who are our generation, McCrea, for me, I knew him instantly from back in I think it was the 90s, the Demon series from DC that he and Ennis did. And then they went on to do the Hitman series, and that is one of the all-time greats.
It's so
Wait,
good.
is
I love
McCrea
those
the
comics.
is that him?
That's him. Yeah,
Yep.
him and Garth
Yep.
Ennis did Hitman, like 60 some issues. But yeah, that's I
Yep.
read those comics when I was young, probably too young. And so like getting
Yeah.
him to do this cover was just amazing. I was like, we only emailed, I never talked to him, but I was like starstruck via email as I was like working out
That
the
is
details
him.
and
Holy
having
Yeah.
him do the cover.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to know.
I can imagine. Yeah, Hitman, you know, one of the things that one of the reasons I think Ennis is the GOAT for me is like, he'll always, you know, he's ludicrous and extreme and over the top and absurd in a lot of the ways he approaches his stories, but then never at the expense of the long-term character arcs and storytelling. Like somehow he brings it all together in poignant, you actually want to cry ways. And you're like,
Yes.
what the
Yeah.
fuck? How did you do that? And you're like, this
Yeah.
was nothing but like, you know, this should have just been like shock value comics. And somehow you made it real on top of never sacrificing the crazy shock value absurdity of the whole thing. Which is something we're going to talk about the writing of these stories too, because I notice a similar penchant that you have in your writing, and maybe it's just for the stories in here. That's something we're gonna talk more about, and I'm gonna ask you about.
That's
like,
your
there's
first pull
plainly...
quote there, Zach.
I'll take it.
So
But
we're
yeah,
gonna get there in
no,
just a moment. But... Oh no, that's cool. I was just gonna say there is like you plainly have a satirical, or at least stories in this one. There are love letters to comics and different genres of comics, but always with a certain absurdism or satirical quality, or both. That is pretty. At first, I thought, you know, oh, this is going to be one story in here, and that's pretty much all the stories. Like this is, and I don't know if that is like your voice, and like this is something you're discovering about yourself, or if this is just like what you want the Comics Bookcase series to predominantly be. Actually, we're here. I just said it. Let's ask. What's your, from your own take, having written these stories? Is this like kind of your approach to most stories, or is this something you were looking to do with Comics Bookcase?
I think I think both. I mean, like there's definitely like a process involved where I would start with sort of the simple concept, which would be like, let's do a horror story about a werewolf priest. Let's do a superhero whose powers work like this. Let's do a dark mage who's kind of a smart aleck. And then I would, as I tinkered with it, I would push it into very personal territory because I wanted to like take these genres and sort of some of the tropes I was playing with and do them in a way that only I could do them. So like that's where that would, like, I think you're right. Like you're picking up on like there's almost two stories to each of them, or they all kind of look like they're going in one direction and then totally end up going in another. Like because I think I would start with this, like, I'm going to write a very sincere fantasy story, and I couldn't do it. Like I would like, I
nope.
kind of,
I could tell.
I'd get it in motion, and then it would just want to go into, it would just want to be more me. And I'm like, I tend to like, you know, have a self-deprecating sense of humor or whatever. And so I would start with like the familiar aspects, and then as I would try to make it my own, it would become something totally different. And that kind of just happened with all 6 of these by the end of it at a certain point. Like they all I think have one moment where they turn. So.
Right. They all become commentary on the thing itself in some way, shape, or form. To differing degrees. Like some go fully absurd, some are just lightly satirical, but they're all that element of like holding up a mirror to itself is present in all of them. So I definitely caught that. All right, so we got some interior. Here are those wonderful creepy looking kids that we were talking about, like part Scooby-Doo, but
the Marty McFly life jacket,
very much it's you know, his own style here and how he draws them.
Another kid who's got the
and the haircut too. I mean, let's face it, that was plainly what would.
They all look a little familiar, like you said. Like the one kid has a Goonies thing going on.
The comics. Oh, a Goonie. Which the Goonies? The
one with the hat. Yeah.
This guy. This guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Goonies. Another one.
And then of course,
terrifying.
Another one. Which thankfully no remakes. They're not even trying to remake that one. I don't know why, because Well, we'll see. Maybe that moment is past and we're all going to move on, but we'll see. We can always circle back. But here is that monstrous taken from part Pee-wee's Playhouse, like a demented Pee-wee's Playhouse, onset dementia Pee-wee's Playhouse. But you can see the long boxes on one shelf, sort of the giant, almost omnibus looking graphic novels there, the three eyeball and the tongue. I know that comes from the, like, essentially the big mouth chair and whatnot from Pee-wee's, but that is perfect. And the multiple limbs. And he's got this, he draws him with this manic energy at all times, which is, I think, the thing that I love about it and why it seems demented is, like, he's a friendly one, but at the same time, like, even those eyeballs, like, everything about it is just like this absolutely manic version. And the kids are rightly terrified of seeing the thing.
Yeah.
No, all it does is tell them stories.
But they're acting the way they should. Like, if something would be wrong with them if they were like, "Oh, great, what a friendly guy!" Like, if he was looking like that.
Right. Oh my goodness. So we have that, and then here is Readman's art for the werewolf priest story, and of course, you created a journalist protagonist. Gee, I wonder where you got that from. And
down in South Texas as well.
Down in South Texas. I was going to say, a lot of the humor here is obviously pulled from how people treat the border and the issues that go on down there and the thinking that goes on down there. So there's a lot of, even though this is probably the closest to a straight story in the entire anthology, where the humor only pops up here and there, but when it pops up, it is properly, like, absurdist humor, where you're just you're almost like, oh, I didn't realize we were going here, because it's very over the top when it hits.
It is.
But yeah, as you can see,
her
like,
artwork, her artwork is phenomenal. Like, I'm such a big fan.
That chair image is just perfect.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just the chair with his stuff on it. It does so much work in the story. Like,
his blood-soaked stuff on it, though. But it's like, and then there it is, and it's so interesting because, of course, he gets bitten, and then it's just like he sheds all his clothing, blood-soaked, and it's gone. And you're just like, it almost doesn't make. You kind of know it's a werewolf story, so it does make sense, but it almost doesn't make sense. Yet it says everything you need to know right there.
There's a lot of pulp to it. Like, it's kind of like EC Comics inspired. Like, it makes just enough sense, but it's pulp storytelling. So, like, there's certain places where we just do away with reality.
That's what's missing in our description. That's the factor there. It's pulp. It is
it's pulp.
So acutely pulp, which is always so satisfying. Always so satisfying when done well.
Well, and this story to me felt very much like a Robert Rodriguez movie type of a thing. That was definitely a flavor. Yeah.
The Grindhouse.
If he was going to do a werewolf movie, it would. Yeah, exactly. It would very much be this type. All right. The Werewolf Priest. That is story number 1. Then we get to Nick Cagnetti's story, Mr. Pink Lemonade himself.
That's right.
And this is, of course, much like Pink Lemonade, is sort of superhero-y, superhero-y, but then with commentary to it. You kind of stuck to Nick's wheelhouse here with this one.
I wrote this one for him to do. Like I would have been really upset if he couldn't do it, because he also loves Spider-Man, and it's a bit of a Steve Ditko riff, at least at the beginning. Like, it becomes something else by the end. But like, I tried to entice him to do a superhero story with me by letting him do some Spider-Man-y things. So, and it worked. So he was game. And there's also Clippy from Microsoft Office is one of the inspirations for our superheroes. So the original generative AI Clippy.
Because we all had to say farewell, right? This is our like, thanks for your service, Clippy.
Yep. So it bites him, and that's how he gets his powers.
I'm not sure anyone's actually thanking Clippy for its service, but you know what I mean.
I never found it very helpful, personally.
Never.
I don't know.
Nope. Never. Don't think anyone ever found it. I think when the news broke that Microsoft was retiring Clippy, I'm pretty sure all the responses that we heard online were people like,
finally,
we did everything in our power to make sure it went away, and we forgot it existed. Like, the moment we got our computer, the first thing you do is, how do you turn that fucking thing off? And then from that point forward, you never saw them again. But we all remember it because of how And it's so funny because I feel like this is something that companies never. It must work. They all do this with every new thing. Like nowadays, the big thing is, of course, the before we get to the responsibility here. Nowadays, I think it's that thing where it's like the chat box, like "Can I help you?" window of every
It
website
comes
you
up
go
on
to.
websites.
That like you go there and it blows up and it like blocks your view of the whole website until you can tell it, or like downsize it and find a way to get it out of there. And then every time you move to a new page, sometimes it'll pop back up and you're like, Jesus God, I don't want help. Go away. And things like that. I don't know why companies do that. And then of course your phones that are preloaded with apps that like will always like you have to find a way to turn them off and make them go to sleep. And it's like, I feel like this can't possibly be something that has ever worked for a single tech company,
Like,
but it's like still a go-to.
And who likes it? Like, no, like I'm just trying to find
Yeah.
an oil change place, and there's this lady in the corner being like, what can I help you with?" I'm like, "Nothing. Get out of my way. I'm looking for an oil
Right.
change place."
Right. Yeah, and they're usually not helpful. Or we were already on our way. We knew how to do it. We were like, let me just go do it. I don't know. It's like Clippy at least was from an era where home computers were new. And
Yeah,
so it
there's
was,
novelty to
the
it,
assumption was people needed some training. People needed a little guide. And then for some reason this has stuck through and I'm like, dude, we are all computer literate. Like now people like computers are native to the latest generations. Like this is just not necessary anymore. Anyway, Responsibility is the name of the Nick Cagnetti one. So that is the superhero name. But you can also see the Spider-Man reference there as well, like the great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. So yes, the responsibility. Oh, and this is actually kind of cool because it is he gets his powers by being responsible is something that I really appreciated on that, and where a lot of the humor comes, where he has to do something responsibly to in fact have superpowers, which is about as not exciting as it sounds, which is kind of the great part of it.
That's the joke.
Yeah. We intentionally made it so the responsibilities he was taking on were the most mundane things we could think of. So he's like, at one point he's waiting for a package, and so he can like hover slightly off the ground because he did that. It's like the more of those like small responsibilities he takes on, the more equally small powers he gains. So like, we'd love to do more with this character too at some point. I think there's like potential to, despite the way it ends, there's like we have an idea for like how to kind of bring him back and do more. So
Okay. Very cool. And as we're going through these stories, Werewolf Priest ends like that is plainly to be continued. That was a very much a part one, I'm assuming. Because it did. Yeah, it felt like chapter one, and it was like, okay, that's not a complete story. So that should be coming back for volume 2, maybe Responsibility. We shall see. And then we get to the fantasy, the very, very humor, like Terry Pratchett and
Terry
style,
Pratchett, 100% was the tone for this one. Yeah, you nailed it.
Perfect. That was he's usually with this style of comedy, with fantasy, it's like he is kind of the OG, kind of the main one,
the master.
But I love the art in this one too. I love the design of I'm forgetting our main guy's
panel
name.
Composition on these pages too.
Gold Mask, the Gold Mask design. And Luke is amazing at panel composition. Like I don't know, like he takes risks with the way he does it, I think, but like it just works. Like I love his page composition. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah. Oh, see if I just scroll down long enough. There it is. Gold Mask. All right. Mask, beautiful. Yeah. And then, of course, the Next Door, the sequel to Zack's very first comic. And as we can see, it is just more fun with neighbors who don't like each other.
I love the main character. The subtitle for this one could be One Angry Man. So.
Yes.
But we always try to do something with him where he's not angry in a cliched like boomer way, like the way you've seen before. We try to just make him grumpy in a little bit different way. So you're always kind of guessing what he's thinking. But.
Yeah. Because you can't always tell, like he's not yeah, angry is almost not the word I would have used to describe him because of the way he channels whatever it is he's trying to do in any given scene. He's much more like he's plainly socially awkward in this very this very spastic way where it's like he doesn't do things in half measures, but it isn't quite like angry isn't it's not as simple and straightforward as
That's
just
true.
angry.
Yeah. He's very set in his ways, and he has like a very distinct worldview, but it's not malicious.
Yeah, right. It's inconsiderate, but not malicious.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
That's how I'm described.
So yeah, next door.
Very often.
I hope it's
Yes.
relatable. I feel like it'll be relatable, dude. There's a lot of people in comics, I think, feel that way.
That's how most people would describe me. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's how most people would describe their neighbors. Like or
Yeah.
if not the neighbors right now, we've all had that neighbor where we're just like, they're not a terrible person, but you cannot deal with them or stand them. Like there's such a problem child in your life, and it's
You don't want to run into them. Like they're not doing anything actively bad to you, but you don't want to run into them.
Right.
That's kind of who he is.
And is this is the plan for Next Door #2 to be serialized in the Death of Comics Bookcases, or are you going to do a standalone Next Door #2 at some point?
So we're still figuring that out a little bit. But we're definitely like Pat's gonna be in town the week after the campaign ends, and we're gonna sit down and we've already outlined a full Next Door #2, and so it's gonna come down to like the question of, do we want to take this incredibly hard to market comic back to crowdfunding, or do we want to just kind of put it in the anthology? So we'll figure that out. But there's definitely going to be more. This one for sure. There's more coming and coming soon, because I've already written the next 10 pages and it's happening. Awesome. But it's a tough. Like it doesn't do well. Like Kickstarter is not built, I think, for like slice of life nuance.
Right. No, it's totally not.
Yeah.
It does okay, but yeah, you're not going to rake in your 10K like you are on this, and you're only halfway through. So yeah, it's a harder road to hoe. That. Yeah.
We learned that with the first campaign. Like people came out to support it, but that was also during August 2020. Kickstarter was sort of on easy mode because everyone was home and had money, and Twitter was functional. So like it was easy to get your funding goal. It's a lot different now. It's the work. You can still get forward, but you have to work a lot harder at it, I think, than you did a few years ago. Plus,
just
there's a lot more creators on there now.
Just a lot.
Exactly. Well, a lot more creators. We're in. I'm in LA. I know the economy is doing supposedly okay, but like inflation has still, like, it's funny, like inflation's under control, by which they mean it's slowed down, not that it's reversing course. So everything is still more expensive. Right, exactly. So, which is always the fun part about like we've slowed inflation, is like, no, prices are still going up. They're just going up slower. And so it's like, and your wages are not going up anywhere near that speed still. So I think money is tighter. Here in LA, we just went through the dual strikes, and the economy is still kind of reeling from that. So I think discretionary income is tighter than it was during the pandemic. Then of course go ahead.
I think less people are buying comics right now, I think. Absolutely. Is a thing too. So it's like that's one of the things you sacrifice when money's tighter. And I also think that like being at home period, people were buying a lot of comics and really into comics, and now they kind of got that itch scratched a little bit, and they're traveling more and going out to eat and stuff. And I think comics has always been sort of boom and bust, and I think we're in a little bit of a bust cycle at the moment. So but it rewards people who stick around,
Yes. 100%. But I do think that even the people who did well, like I think during that magic window, you seem to have been one of them. So good on you. You got in there during that pandemic time. And so this current campaign is doing really, really well. But I do think it's one of the, like, all the creators from that time have ramped up, and they're now doing like 4 or 5 Kickstarters a year, up from like the 1 per year or 2 per year that they were doing before. And now it used to be that like there was this one moment time of year that suddenly there would be 200 to 300 Kickstarters happening at once. And that was weird. That was crazy. Now it's the norm. Now it's always 200 to 300 Kickstarters at all time.
And you can't be heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's people on there with huge audiences and just like, and also like if you're not like it's just hard, man. And you don't like I was lucky that I did that first one because I do have the like next door email blast I can send that reaches 300 people, who
Right.
all have Kickstarter accounts
Right.
and stuff. But like I couldn't
Yep.
imagine doing this more than every few years. Like at least one a year is probably the max for me. I don't think I'll ever be one of those like 4 a year
Interesting.
people. That's just tough.
They're impressive to
No,
watch in action,
no.
but I couldn't
The
imagine.
stamina it requires is
Yeah.
just absurd.
Oh, I mean, I actually sometimes get like almost annoyed is too strong of a word, but I can't think of a better one. But it's like the people whose campaign just ended and you just supported them, and literally like 2 weeks later, they're like, here's the next one. It's launched.
Yeah.
And it's like so-and-so launched a new campaign. And I'm like, oh my God, take a breath. I'm like, I
know,
can't,
yeah.
like, I'm just supporting you and I can't keep up. So it's like, come on, man. But I know a lot of people are they want it to be a career, and I get that.
Yeah. I'm not going to do that. I want to build an audience on there, but I don't want them to feel obligated to back more than one a year. That's kind of my personal rule. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll end up
Interesting.
doing
That's
another
cool.
one this year, but that's my
I
feeling at the moment. And
probably-
I'm like deep into this
Yeah.
and exhausted. So that's part
Right.
of the thinking.
I mean, you've got a lot of comics to make, like that you're putting together and working with the artists, and I do think of a giant. This isn't a giant anthology. I probably shouldn't use the word giant, but still a larger than normal sized comic that is an anthology with multiple creative partners. Like that's a lot to wrangle. So I do think that's something that takes more time. Yeah.
So there were 20 creators. I think I counted 20 who contributed to this, and like that's a lot of emails to send.
That's a lot of
Yes.
emails, buddy.
And you got to get those emails right because you want them to have all the
Right.
info they need. You want to be cool. You want to
Right.
Project
consider it a time
management
zone.
skills
Right.
alone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's been a feat, and I've been working on this for a full year before it launched. So
Oh yeah.
that was the amount of time it took because I wanted it to be done by the time we launched. But.
Right. And here's hoping it does get easier as you continue to produce these. But yeah, it'll probably never become easy. Like it'll never be a cinch. It'll always take a lot of work. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And on to PJ Holden here. The guy who's big in the UK, as we were discussing earlier with Judge Dredd and other 2080 comics. And yeah, you can see, like, I can see him doing all the 2080 stuff, like Rogue Warrior, ABC Warriors, Judge Dredd, all the stuff that I grew up with. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. Like, and we had Simon Bolin letter it, and he also letters a lot of 2080. So
That's
right. Simon's an incredible letterer, and
This
Dearbook
just
Kelly
made me-
colored it. It looks
This
great.
just made me think of Street Sharks, and I loved it. It was great.
I've been saying about this one, like, yeah, there is no way I was gonna make a comic this big and not put some apes in it because I love comic
Right.
book apes. And then if you need apes doing something, why not have them fighting sharks?
Fighting sharks, absolutely,
What exactly?
absolutely.
They are probably the two comic anthropomorphic animals that you do the most especially in terms of action. I think those are your two. Yeah.
Dinosaurs probably in the conversation a little bit. You don't have to make them anthropomorphic.
No.
You can, if we do more of this, if we do another ape story, there may be dinosaurs.
Good. There should be.
Yeah. Agreed.
Absolutely. Apes versus shark, the Omega Brain 4. Yeah, so it'll be either apes versus sharks versus dinosaurs, or get rid of one of those, add in the dinosaurs, something. Maybe you add a new versus into the title every single issue, and it just
That'd
keeps
be really
compounding.
funny. Yeah.
Right. There you go.
Until there's like 6 things vying for space.
Until there's 6 things. You can feel free to run with that if you actually wind up doing.
I'll play with it. I'll see how that
my
goes.
blessing. Yeah. See what happens. And then once again, the covers. This is the main one, as we were talking about earlier, by McCrea, the guy who
that's for the
with
standard
Ennis, and
48-page stapled version. That's got all 48 pages of story, start to finish. So that's what that one's for. Yeah.
And then this is your special.
The deluxe edition. Yeah, this one's 60 pages. It's got 12 extra pages of process material, which is like scripts, inks, colors, all that good stuff.
Cool.
Pinups of the other 2 covers, and it's perfect bound. So if you prefer like more of a trade that you can stick, it'll be skinny, but you could still put it on your shelf. That's the deluxe with Raoul Allen's cover, which kind of has a grab bag of the characters in it rather than just one.
Very cool. Very cool. And I do, one of these days, being a child of the 90s, like when I first saw this, I was like, oh, is he doing a die cut cover? Like,
Yeah.
But no, not quite. But I was like, I don't even know. Yeah, I'm not even sure what printers would deal with that these days. But I'm sure you might be able to wrangle a printer to do that. But I don't think it's an option they give very often.
You hit the nail on the head on why we didn't do that, because I logistically I wouldn't even know where to start, and I wouldn't want to have to like pull apart or whatever 50 different die cut.
Well, and there are
certain
things here like and I think Raul, like he did things, and maybe it's because you're like, no, we're not actually making this die cut, so he was able to do things like have this hand reaching out and covering over one of the things, which you couldn't do with the die cut because you'd be it'd be behind the cut. In the tongue, that's kind of I do love that tongue, and I love the drool comes out that
was all Ryan, by the way. Like, I did not, in my script there was nothing like giant tongue, like that was his creative license, and I love it.
Well, you gave him that chair. I'm telling you, the moment you said the chair from Pee-wee's Playhouse, I was like, oh, that mouth, and there was always that giant tongue. It never came out, I don't think, but it was always in there. You could see it, in the giant mouth. So
if it had a big mouth and you could see the tongue, you knew it would be fearsome if unleashed, and so that's what happens here.
Exactly.
Beautiful. And then the Nick Cagnetti cover, Death of Comics Bookcase.
I thought it was so funny. I love the double cut and everything.
Yeah.
The paperclip homage is that's chef's kiss for sure.
That character design, Nick is just so talented, man. Like, unbelievable. It looks like an Adult Swim cartoon,
It absolutely does.
Yes, it absolutely does. Yeah, it does. That's a good call. All right. So digital 48-page delivered to your inbox. You could even get the digital deluxe
for process. Yeah, if you're a process nerd, you want to see what some of the script look like. You want to see what the inks and colors look like without my writing cluttering it up. That's the version you'll want.
Right. Beautiful. And then the physical, I should probably do this also down here. So digital deluxe is 12. So normal digital 8, digital deluxe 12, $12. And then a standard cover physical issue is 15. And digital deluxe physical is 25 for the perfect bound and the extra pages. Ooh, and then of course
all three
the full Monty for all $50 for all 3 together.
3 books, $50, and that's the only way to get the Cagnetti cover. So it's kind of rarer than the other 2. Yeah, I like that idea. It's like the superhero variant is the rarest, because that reminds me of going to different shops looking for covers,
Yeah.
And virtual hang plus everything else, $100, and get to hang out with Zack like we are doing today. It's great, guys. It's worth it.
Only 4 people wanted that one, and two of them are related to me. So,
but that's I feel like though that is a good recommendation. It's like people who know you want to hang out with you. See, it would be worse.
That's true.
It was like everyone who knows you is like, we're okay. We don't need.
Truth be told, I know all 4 of them, so it's only 2 of them are actually.
There you go.
2 are other people, and this one's cool. The name on the bookcase one, it's
that is cool.
There's the inside back cover on both books. John J. Hill's designing it, and it's going to be like the names scattered around as if they've been carved into the side of the bookcase. So.
That's cool.
But there's only a few. Like, that's why we kept it limited to like a high tier, so that we could kind of stylize it and make it look really cool. And that's kind of turned into the friends and family tier to an extent.
Right. Which makes sense. Yeah. And then project consulting review, which is probably one of the highest end tiers here. So if you want a project consultant session with Zack, experienced professional writer, editor, plus everything else comes with it, and that is $500.
A lot of comics industry connections and that sort of thing.
That's right.
Around,
Yep. And then the super rare
That's
Ashcan edition.
That's actually a great little tier there. I have to say, that's a great idea. Huh. Oh.
Been around for a little bit, so I know there's some things.
Yeah.
And then the last one I'm making. I haven't told any of the contributors yet, but I'm making an Ashcan of just the colored art without the letters. It's only going to go to them, and then the 2 people so far who backed this. That's the moonshot tier. That one.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's it. That's cool. All of them.
Good stuff. Good tiers.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. 2 people have already taken it, and only 5 grand total. There will be no more than 5. So that's awesome.
And the rest will go to people who worked on the book. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll probably print those ever. We'll see. But.
Beautiful. And it's a little bit of praise from people who are not us. Death of Comics bookcase harkens back to a simpler, more chaotic time for mainstream comics, a potent blend of genres, styles, and personalities that will keep readers guessing and hungry for more, hoping this is the first volume of many. Well, there's at least one more, because this one's funded. This one's going.
Right.
I think we're going to do 3. That's the plan, is a trilogy, because I want to do it. It's an homage to Death of Superman. So the second one would be Reign of the Comics Bookcases. And the third one would be Return of the Comics Bookcase.
Nice.
Very nice.
And if we do the second one in the framing sequence, you'll definitely see Cyborg Bookcase and Bookcase of Steel. So
nice.
There you go.
So we get a whole burial scene and some good zombie action from the bookcase.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's coming next year, hopefully.
Beautiful.
Fantastic.
I love it. Love it.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Ooh, look at that. Chris Condon quote. The werewolf priest is a lycanthropic blast. It's scary fun and oh so very Texas. Chris Condon from that Texas blood. Nice. And David Pepose. Top shelf collection of inventive concepts and spectacular artwork. Death of Comics bookcase is a truly singular anthology by an exciting team of rising stars. Amazing.
Very nice of all these accomplished writers to take a look at the book and do this. So I really appreciate each and every one of them. Some of these, like David Andrew here, like way too kind. Thank you, Harrison. I really appreciate that.
Well, I agree with him though when he's saying reminiscent of that Justice League International comic from back in the day that was Giffen and McGuire, where it had that humor. It was like a serious superhero comic, but also very humor heavy. And was one of
one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yes. And it predates a lot of like the Christopher Priest stuff and whatnot. So it was kind of one of those first that really combined the two in mainstream superhero comics and like just worked. Which later then I think Priest did that with Black Panther to amazing effect, and Quantum and Woody, things like that. But yeah,
absolutely.
This was one of the first, the OGs. So no, I agree with that. That's cool. Oh, and Easton DeVerna. I do like him quite a bit. I love A Guardian. I haven't read Samurai Grandpa, but I have Samurai Grandpa. And then I read
Samurai Grandpa is so good. I love Samurai Grandpa.
Oh yeah. Well, I love the artist on that too. I had his Western comic that he did that I love that thing, which of course I can't remember the title right now, but I love it. I swear. But I do love that. And then Samurai Grandpa, when they worked together on that, I was like, well, yeah, of course I'm getting that. But I have not read that one yet. But A Guardian is great. 2 volumes of that have already been made. Yeah, each story in this collection had me cackling at the absurdity of the comics themselves and the real world complexities they address. Wonderful satire, and it looks like they're only warming up. That is something I also agree with. This does feel like, as good as it is already, being sort of a stab at all these different genres and all these different stories, it does still feel like, I mean, I think it's a good idea that you did an anthology like this and that you're going to do probably a few more volumes, because this does feel like you warming up as a creator. So I think it's going to be amazing to see like where this all takes you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's designed with the whole frame concept and the name to be the death of one phase of my involvement with comics and the
Right.
start of another. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of these are starting points that are gonna. I mean, I'd like to continue all 6 of them. To be honest with you, I'd like to do more with each and every one of these stories.
Yeah.
And are these stories going to be the stories that, like, for volume 1, 2, and 3 of Death of Comics Bookcase? Any plans to throw in a few like out of nowhere different stories, or will these be like, this is what we're following for these 3 volumes kind of a thing?
No, it's so some of them will return, some of them won't. So like I think in this, I've got the plans for the second one kind of loosely in place, and you'll see more Gold Mask in that book for sure, and you'll see more of the frame sequence,
Okay.
and then figuring out more. I'd like to spin some of them out into full series. Like I like the Werewolf
Right.
Priest 8-pager is essentially a pitch for a mini series that I'd
Gotcha.
like to get going. So yeah, some of them will come and go, and then like the responsibility, and I'd like to return in the third one. So like it's
Okay.
it's kind of the creation of a world, you know, and like so hopefully some full series will spin out of it, and characters will come and go within the anthologies. Like I could see doing a 1-page tease in volume 2 for like the responsibility and full story that'll be in volume 3. Like I think an anthology series gives you a lot of uh, opportunities like that to have some fun with people who are going to read all 3, you know. So that's what I'm hoping to do.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for
Well,
this to be the
awesome.
start
All right.
of the Death of Comics Bookcase series that will have very loyal readers who follow all 3.
Absolutely,
Oh,
100%.
absolutely. I think three is a short series. I think that's going to be a no-brainer for most people who anyone who takes a look at this one, I think will be in for until the bitter end.
That's the plan. Yeah, 3 of them, and then 1 per year. So it won't be too much to like. By the time you'll still remember having read the first one, but you'll be ready for more. Hopefully by this time next year.
All right. Good stuff.
Oh,
Good stuff all around. But did you freeze, Dave?
awesome. All right. Yeah. Am I frozen to you? I'm not frozen to me.
You're
you're
back
good now.
now.
Oh, okay, I'm back
Yeah. I think
now.
there was half a second there, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, all of you guys disappeared to me too, so it's probably me. But okay, it is time to wrap this up for today. So it's time for the wine pairings. What did we pair with this crazy ass absurd anthology of comic genres? And I don't remember where we left off last week, Dallas. Do you remember where we left off? Who went first last time?
I went first last time.
Okay, I'll go first this time. So,
yeah.
All right. This was not the easiest thing to decide on a pairing for.
I was like, I have no idea how you're going to do this.
The one thing that helped was, anthologies are always a bit of an, what are we going to do for an anthology? Because each story is going to have its own flavor. And you're trying to match a flavor to a flavor. But I think the fact that you approached all these stories in a certain way where, yes, artistically, each artist has his own style. Each genre is a different genre that you're pulling from, but your voice is already pretty consistent between them.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you.
So that really wound up making it something where I was like, oh, okay, now that I know the flavor of that voice, I'm really pairing that. And then, from there, and I think the kinds of stories you chose to pick too, even though, let's say, the Werewolf Priest is a little darker and a little more horrific than the other stories, it still you still threw that humor in there. Like, that was the Werewolf Priest is probably the biggest outlier of them all in terms of it just being a little more intense and a little more extreme. And then the others wound up kind of fitting a closer mold to each other. But even the Werewolf Priest, you threw in that little bit of absurdity into it that like really helped tether it to the others. And I was like, you know what? I would drink the same thing with all of these. So what I decided to do was, this is definitely an anthology. This is having fun with these different comic genres. It's having fun with the medium. It's you commenting on that medium. It's you playing with it for the most part. So I really needed a wine that to me is a playful wine. Nothing heavy, nothing too robust, nothing too... this is a comic that's from the very get-go when we see the the monstrous embodiment of the comics bookcase itself. This is light on its feet. It's again, I suppose, again, I can go back to that traumatic in a good way, traumatic in a happy way, kind of approach to things. So anything, I tried a couple, like I did not go with the red wine for this. I tried a couple of reds while reading some of these stories, and I was just like, it's too much. I'm not looking for something that's going to be that. I didn't want anything with harsh edges. I didn't want anything with that had too much body, too much alcohol, too much, even flavor wise. I was like, I need something quaffable. I need something that is a chugger, that I have to be careful or I'm drinking too much of it, if I'm just sitting here. Now, the joy is I did pick something that didn't have too much alcohol, so that can go a little bit, I don't have to be quite as careful with that. But I went with, there is a white wine that is one of my favorites out there, and I gave it a shot. Reading, I kind of started from the top of the comic and gave it a shot, and I wound up sipping a glass and a half all the way to the end of the comic, straight through. And I was like, yep, this is the thing that I can just drink and drink and drink and read this comic. So this is a white wine that is, and I'm going to try a trick here. I'm going to try flipping my screen so people can actually read this real quick. All right, there we go. It is a Muscadet Sèvres et Maine. Sur Lee, which means it was aged on the lees. And basically, this is a go-to bottle that I love to get at Trader Joe's. I don't know if there's a Trader Joe's over where you are, Zach.
Sure.
I know they can be very regional. But Muscadet is something that I'll talk a little bit about what Muscadet is, but it's everywhere. They make quite a lot. And this is the only thing they make in the Muscadet, is this Muscadet Sèvres et Maine. It's all from a grape called the melon grape or melon, I guess, because it's French. So Melon de Bourgogne is the full name of the grape, but it's not a melon. It is just a grape. They happen to call it melon. And it comes out in the Muscadet region. It's in the Loire Valley. And it is just it's one of the cleanest wines that you can drink. It's affordable. Most Muscadets, this one from Trader Joe's is $7.99 a bottle. So it is like super budget. Most Muscadets, though, you're looking at like 15 to 20 for the vast majority of them. They really don't go. Some go 20 to 30. Like the highest end Muscadets are like 20 to 30. I don't think I've ever seen a Muscadet Sèvres et Maine that has ever been over $25 to $30. Like, they are generally affordable wines. They're everyday drinkers, but they're clean, they're crisp. The fruit flavors are not heavy. They're very dialed back. You get some like lemon lime, definitely like a little bit of that like summery limeade feel to it. And then it's just like kissed with this bit of tropical fruit, like pineapple and something like a pineapple mango flavor on the back end, but it's very light and gentle. For the most part, it's that citrus, the lemon lime, and then the saline quality. So a little bit of like licking and a rock that has been touched by ocean water or something I think sometimes you always hear like seashell as a flavor profile in wine, and it's like licking a seashell. And I'm like, yeah, that has that. So you get this little bit of saltiness, all this citrus, and this light body, low alcohol. It is so the first time I ever had a Muscadet, I didn't realize how cheap and prevalent they were. I went back, I bought 2 more bottles, and I held on to them for dear life. Like, oh my God, I don't think I'll ever find them this cheap again. No, you can find them cheap all the time. So now I know. Yep. And now I buy them all the time. And it is one of my go-to whites. It is just, again, it fit this comic because it's not heavy. It's not too much. And the saline quality is not overpowering. That crispness is not overpowering. It's not like, say, a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc or a those kinds of whites that can sometimes, there's something zingy about, but super zingy about it, where it's like, whoo, I got to be in the mood for that. This one, I am always in the mood for this. And I think it flowed between all your different stories. It's light, it's relaxed. It's playful with its flavors without ever being overpowering. So this wound up doing it for me, where all the other wines I attempted, there was something too prominent about them where I was like, no, this comic is just not it needs something lighter. It needs something gentler. And so I'm going with Muscadet on that one. That's my pairing.
All
All right, Dallas,
take
what
it.
you got?
Yeah,
See that?
that's
I
good.
could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that. All right, I took a slightly different route. Some might say circuitous route into this week's pairing. Um, Starting out, I tried to do the same thing. I should preface this by saying when I approach these pairings, I usually find the wine I would like to drink as a character in the property, where I'm just sort of the Where's Waldo in the background. I'm never going to lift a finger to help. I'm never going to get involved. I'm not saving any old ladies or babies. I'm just leaned against a wall drinking my wine and being as pompous as possible. Or the wine I would actually drink while reading.
Someday, Dallas. I am actually going to take. I don't know. I'm gonna either learn how to draw or hire an artist. I'm gonna take actually like famous pages from comics and start drawing you in the background with that wine, and we're gonna have a whole series of images from this. I'm starting to get this idea. Anyway,
and what's crazy is we already have a couple of creators who are already adding apparently the Dallas avatar into the backgrounds of their their works. So that may be a thing.
We had a couple of weeks ago we had them on, and they were like, "Yeah, we're adding you to issue number 2," and I was like,
I know.
"Please do."
It's like, oh god. So I attempted to do that, pair with the narrative, pair with the world, pair with this sort of individual pieces in the anthology, and that just I was coming up short to find, in terms of something that kind of really complemented the piece, the anthology. And so then I moved on to maybe a flight, a curated sort of flight that went with, the sort of larger movement of the piece. That just seemed a little silly. And then I decided on the uh, most sort of uh, mature, for lack of a better term, quality that I got from the piece, which is your voice. Um, it was curious because when I come across anthologies, I can almost check out halfway through because they often feel so kind of harried and kind of thrown together, and everybody's trying to
Yeah.
show all their tricks
Just
rather than show a quality of their work. And what you've done is I think you've shown a quality of your work, and part of that quality is one, your reference, your sort of pop culture references,
There's a lot of those.
your references are just so so clear, but they're not heavy-handed. And I think also the breadth of the content that you're interested in, stories you're interested in telling, come through very clear. And so the entire time, I felt like I was in very good hands. I was satisfied turning the page, which again for me is a big thing. If
Me too. No, I get
it's
it.
a big thing,
Yeah.
especially when you come across a lot of the quantity of comics that we can kind of come across
Sure.
in
I
this
know it. I know
sphere.
how it is. Yeah.
And so I decided to pair with the core story of the kids and the actual bookcase and your voice. Um, so two things came to mind. One, I knew I wanted to find a wine that was sort of someone's baby, someone's sort of treasure that had lots of influences that were sort of right on the glass. And a couple of years ago, I came across this Dino Tischetti. I think it's Tischetti, but Tischetti, he's a Sicilian vintner, and he comes from like 3 or 4 generations. But he's been doing this thing lately where he makes these very special little bottles, and it's organically grown, it's sustainably farmed, it's a true Sicilian specialty because the grape is Frappato. If anyone knows anything about Frappato, it is from the central sort of region of Tuscany. It is minimal labeling. He does this thing in wild green or blue glass. The bottles, the cork is, sustainable. He took over his father's practice vineyard after an earthquake kind of ruined it, and he invested his time into this one bottle of wine, honestly. And like I said, it's a Frappato, which means it's in a deep Italian red. You're going to get a very similar quality you get from a Pinot Noir. It's sort of like an elegant Pinot. You get the intense florals, the spiced berries. You get a really satisfying and silky tannin, which is great for me because I'm not a guy who really enjoys a high tannic structure. So yeah, I went with this Frappato. As you can see, the bottle is completely empty. It's called Without. Notice here, it's called Without, the Frappato Terra Siciliana IGT. This is a 2021, I think. And what's crazy is with all that goes into making this, it's only $15 a bottle, and it is fantastic. Like truly, I cannot recommend this enough. You can find this at your better wine houses, even though it's really inexpensive. It's fantastic. So that's my ramble. That is my pairing. Like I said, I paired it with why am I sweating all of a sudden? With you
on the spot.
Your
That's
voice.
What happens.
Specifically, and
well, I appreciate that. It sounds like that there's a lot of attention to detail in that wine, and so there was definitely a lot of that in this. So I want to get every little
creator
detail
driven.
Right. Yes,
So.
yeah, cool.
That is really cool. I love the fact that it's like the only wine that he makes for the most part, from the sound of things. I'm gonna have to.
Well, it's the only one he's taken
and...
this sort of care with. It's like
okay.
I mean,
okay,
the glass is like natural glass.
That bottle is awesome. I love that bottle.
It's phenomenal. It's just fantastic.
That is really interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that would be the clear glass thing is a whole different rant that I won't do right now.
Don't go down that road.
That's something that like wine. Yeah, it's a bit of a controversy in the wine world right now.
It is.
But we won't get too nerdy on that right now. So, but those are our pairings. I did want to mention also some of the things Dallas mentioned in terms of the flavor and why he chose what he did. I did want to mention from the Muscadet side of things, I did pick a Surly on purpose, which is not all Muscadet. Surly means it's aged on the lees, which are the dead yeast cells after fermentation is done. They just leave it in the wine for a little bit longer, doesn't it? And they leave those in to sort of let the wine soak up the flavors of those dead yeast cells, which do actually give it this little bit of bready, yeasty, like fresh baked breadiness to the flavor, which was something like it wasn't heavy, it wasn't too pronounced, but it does add a little bit of something else. And I do think that non-Surly Muscadet might be too light and too nondescript of a wine. So my best pairing would be the Surly version, which are very prominent as well, but always double check for that language on the bottle. So,
very cool.
All right.
What you
Those
got,
are
Zach?
our pairings, and then we always ask our guests to bring on a comic. Yeah, that they've been loving and pair it with a beverage of their choice. What do you got, Zach?
Yeah,
no White Claw, by the way.
No, I was hoping this wasn't too obvious or something that someone had done before, but one of my favorite comics of all time that I've revisited recently was Hellboy in Mexico. I don't know if either of you are familiar with that.
Not the Mexico one, no.
It's so good. It's the standalone Hellboy story I give to anyone who's like, I want to read some Hellboy. It's got Richard Corbin art in it. It's got luchadors, zombie turkeys. Like, it's just phenomenal. It's my favorite Hellboy anything. And it's really sort of like, it's not beach Mexico or like resort Mexico. It's like dusty Mexico. Yeah. So I would like to pair that with Modelo. So that was my my pairing. Hellboy in Mexico with an ice cold Modelo. Yeah, with maybe you can make a michelada out of it if you're inclined to do that. I enjoy that. Yep. But I thought that was
It's a good
That
pairing.
was my
I did like
pairing.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so, yeah, Hellboy Mexico, guys. If you've never read a Hellboy and you want to first something, apparently I have not read Hellboy Mexico, so I can't vouch for that one way or the other, but I want to now. And Zach says that is a great first introduction.
I've read
So, and
I've read every Hellboy comic, every BPRD comic. Hellboy in Mexico, my favorite. So if you haven't read it, highly
Interesting.
recommend it. It's just a
Shit.
blast of a comic.
No.
It's one of the rare comics where you get to see Hellboy. Like he makes friends. He gets drunk and makes a best friend. And you often don't get to see Hellboy doing human things, which is a thing I
Right.
appreciate about that one as well.
Right.
So yeah.
Awesome.
I won't spoil anything else
Yeah.
in it. But
No,
it's
no,
a
no.
lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
I've always wanted to like Hellboy. I read a lot of the early, like maybe the first, what would probably be the first 3 or 4 trades or something like that, and then like the first 1 or 2 BPRD stories as well. I fell off that train at some point because they were both just going, and I was like,
They're
right,
still going.
Come back to this. They're still going, although technically Hellboy is finished and BPRD is still going, I think.
Yeah. Well, they end it like they ended the main narrative, but now they're going back and doing like period pieces like with it and filling in gaps and stuff. But they're still making new Hellboy.
Okay.
The story
perfect. But I know
has an ending.
Gotcha. And I know, but one day I've always wanted to do like all the graphic next. I know they've omnibused it like through the roof to where you can do all the Hellboys, all the BPRDs, all in order. And one day I love all the creators on both of those series, everyone who's worked on those things. Love John Arcudi, love Mike Mignola, love
Guy
all those
Davis.
guys.
Yeah.
The
way I did it.
God, poor Guy Davis.
And the way I did it and the way I recommend doing it is I read it all in publication order. So like as it came out, and I did 1 issue a day for like a year and a half. Like I stuck to it, disciplined, and just read 1 issue before I went to sleep every day until I'd read every Hellboy BPRD comic, and it was awesome. Like
that's awesome.
The John Arcudi, Guy Davis BPRD stuff, some of my all-time favorite comics. I just love that stuff. So good.
Yes. That is a great idea. Even when I get the omnibuses, I always Google like the publication order or reading order or things like that, because a lot of the times they're like, you can just group them like this and it works well enough, and I'm like, but I really want to read it as it, like, because these were, as readers during those days, this is when they got certain plot points, right? It's like they didn't have this other thing. Yes, so that's always important to me.
I'm a big publication order guy. Like when I read stuff, I want the publication order. Like I demand it.
I agree. I've been doing that with I've been going back to the Valiant hard omnibuses, and I've had to I have a lot of like the big deluxe omnibuses and whatnot that just collect series by series, and I've had to like,
by the way, Dave, I think we decided on omnibuy. We're gonna
omnibuy. All right, very well. All the omnibuy. Yeah, I have a working. I even shared it with another comics reader where I made a master list of like where in each omnibus you jump to the next one and then jump back to this one and then jump over to this one, and I'm like, this is how you actually should read it versus how they collected it. And it's
I relate to that 100%. It's something I would do. I'd have a spreadsheet figuring it out.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, guys.
Good stuff.
Well, once again, Zack Quaintance, The Death of Comics Bookcase, Volume 1 on Kickstarter until May 2nd. You have 15 more days to get there. Don't wait. Do it now.
That's right. Go do it.
It's funded. It's happening no matter what. And the comic is done. So it is
Don't
happening one way or the other, at least Volume 1.
All the funds now go right to volume,
except
right to Volume 2.
There you go.
To producing it as quick as possible.
He's still got to pay artists. Exactly.
That's
He's going to be paying his collaborators for Volume 2. This is going to help. Don't make us pay out of pocket, just or as little out of pocket as possible. None of us are made of money. That's not why we do this. So help a brother out. Get in there. Back this campaign. It's well worth it. Me and Dallas both agree. Do it. And until next time, this has been Dave and Dallas and Zach. Thank you for watching the Wine and Comics Pairing Show.
Night, guys.
Signing off.
Thanks, everybody.